I might be in a robe and slippers for the rehearsal, and I might just lay down behind my station and take a nap while they were lighting, because it takes less time, to go than going back to my trailer. And on occasion, I would bring the chaise lounge. I'm telling you, it's more comfortable than a stage chair.
This is like a meeting of Narcoleptics Anonymous. Please welcome to the stage Garrett Wang, Robbie Duncan McNeill, Robert Picardo, Mr. Tim Russ, and the amazing, the one, the only Kate Mulgrew. I cannot tell you all what a thrill this is. As you know, this is year number 2 for the Galactic Diversity and Inclusion Convention. We are smaller by choice. We do things a little bit differently because we feel it's that personal connection that makes what we have as fans and Star Trek special. And we can't do that if it's 15,000 people in a room and not being able to have that dialogue. So the fact that you're all willing to be here with us for that is amazing. So let's just start with a thank you, everybody. And I'd like to just, if we could jump right into, Kate, if you could tell us, when you heard about D&I Con and what we were doing here, what your thoughts were.
Well, my thoughts were the same as they were when I was introduced to my crew, those many years ago, and I shudder to think how many years now. Is it 25 years?
At least, yes, almost 30.
It's 30 in January.
Yikes.
29.
God, that's
Yeah, let's not even do this panel. Let's just start drinking. I immediately thought, why is there not more diversity on this bridge? Certainly represented by the gay community. And I went to Rick Berman and talked to him about it. I think we all did at one point or another, didn't we? And he just said it wasn't the time. Not yet. It was enough that they'd had put a woman in the seat. That took some major grappling, as you all know. But my personal feelings about it are that was greatly missed. And I hope that it evolves. We are people. We are human beings. Compassion is the #1 virtue, and it needs to be shared and explored and developed. So that's how I feel about it.
Also, down to you guys. I know Bob and actually Robbie, you are a first timer here at D&I Con. Everyone else was last year. What were your thoughts when you heard these gays are doing a convention? Maybe I should go. Maybe not.
Am I on? I'm on.
It's hard to hear, though.
Is it hard to hear? Is that better?
Blurry.
Is it blurry? Can you hear me?
He's doing it for love.
I'm doing it for... as some of you last night that were at the party... As some of you at the party last night may have heard, a fellow Trek actor described my mask, which is, as Kate says, a gesture of love in my life. Someone described it as crotchless panties on my face. Now that we have a larger group and the whole family is here, I just want to know, by a show of hands, how many people agree with that these look like... Okay. Okay. All right, and
Do they come in other colors?
oh yes, oh yes. By a show of hands, how many people here are also wearing crotchless panties? I'm just curious. Great. Okay, so you asked me what my first thought was about the coming to the D&I Con. My first thought was, first I heard Kate was coming, so I have to be here. Honestly, that's really was my thinking. And my second thought was, the gays throw the best parties, so I gotta go. Right? Yeah, I think that it is this is a beautiful exercise in what Trek is all about inclusion, about diversity, about working together to accomplish great things, and you guys have done that. It was inspiring last night to see some of the awards given out and some of the topics that were discussed and what people are doing in the world. So I love being here. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you.
And you know what's wonderful? It's not just gays in space. It's gays in space. Lest you doubt it for a minute.
They also give the best swag, gays in space. Where else can you get a giant fan that when you deploy it, it says, "Live long and be fabulous"? Can't tell you how often I use that.
Myself, I think I mentioned the show last year, Dan, which was wonderful. When I was invited, I knew the basic concept and idea of what the show was going to, the theme for the show was, but I thought it's a Star Trek or sci-fi, as it were, convention, and I kept thinking, well, you know, that's when I mentioned it. You asked me about it the last time we were at the very end of the show, and I thought, you asked me what I thought about the crowd and everything, and I honestly don't see just interacting with everybody the difference between this crowd and an average Star Trek fan crowd, because we accept everyone in the fandom of Star Trek. Star Trek is hundreds of years into the future. Why would there be any discrimination? Why would there be any? It doesn't stand out to me. And at the same time, I think it's wonderful that we gather with this theme and focus on the diversity and inclusion, which is on the rise in our society. Certainly the focus on it, the discussion about it, all of that is on the rise right now. You know, yes, there are powers who want to put everybody back in a box, but they cannot stop
and he
that.
should be put
They
in
will
one
never.
big box.
They will never, ever stop it. You cannot stop cultural evolution. It is going to continue. We are going to change. We're going to thrive.
I wanted to talk to everybody about this, because this is really what is going on. You can talk about diversity, you can talk about inclusion, but 'twas ever thus. We're just human beings. I mean, that should show you how backward, how really primitive our society is. We are all one. Homosexual, heterosexual, black, white, I mean, it makes absolutely no difference. But we're about as philosophical as fleas. Do you know that? Do you not agree?
100%. And what's really crazy is that throughout history, all of the characters, all of the names, all of the individuals that we have studied through the past, how many of them were gay? How many? Do we know? As far back as the conqueror Alexander the Great. Okay? So people think today that the one side of our society that doesn't have a clue thinks that all of a sudden there was a light switch turned on and all of a sudden they're gay. But you must be mad. It's been around since civilization began. So come on, man, let's get a clue, please, at some point in time. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, to pick up on what both what Tim and Kate just said, DEI is under attack right now,
Yes, it is.
and in specific states in our country, a large swath of our country, where they are trying not just to turn back the clock, but to lump it all in with and to turn the idea woke into a dirty word, the way liberal was turned into a dirty word. During the Reagan years, liberal is a beautiful word. Jesus' love is liberal. And to take a word that starts out meaning something good and then to throw mud on it and ridicule it and as if it were something that is stupid or anti-Christian or all of these things drives me nuts. So that's why I'm here, I know, and I think that's why I know that this group of people on stage feel strongly. What Kate said, it's your business who you love, it's not the government's business, and we're all alike. We're obviously all on a spectrum of humanity that we all share, and that is what's beautiful. What makes us different is what makes us beautiful. And of course, the core message of Star Trek has always been diversity and inclusion. So I am happy to be part of this, to be part of a franchise that promoted that, even if they were not as far along the curve in recognizing it as we all hoped in retrospect they would have been at the time our show came along. But I think that the newer shows and the new characters in Star Trek, this organization was founded when they had the first openly gay character on Discovery. So I think that finally Star Trek is really living up to its original ideals.
And I also think that given the social constraints and prejudices, the gays are very brave. It's a different kind of courage, too, because it's a moral courage. And it's steeped in, I think, a truth that most of us are afraid to face even within ourselves. Without that courage, we would not have the culture that we have, which is actually quite advanced. I live in New York City, and I wouldn't have any of the benefits that I have there if it weren't for the gay courage in the arts, in music, in poetry, in writing, in literature. So I applaud the courage. It's exemplary, and it's singular. You guys are singular. It's great. Yeah.
Wow, so many thoughts, so I'm going to have to sift through and choose one to go with. The courage that we have comes from the courage that you showed us. The courage of dealing with the struggle of a society where, because you're a different gender, somehow that makes you different in an actual sense. The fact that you were able to achieve everything that you did in your career at a time when it was not a given or an easy thing. We got to sit back and we got to see, wow, it is possible. If she can do it, we can figure out a way to do it, to deal with our own obstacles. That's what I believe. Was that helpful? I thought so.
And it was hard. I don't think they really wanted me, but they had to have me because the time was nigh. A woman had to come in. But they had a man in the wings. I'm sure they had several men in the wings, didn't they?
They did. As in fact, they did have several men. I was there for the test screenings that we had when they were bringing in some of the actresses to test for the scenes that we ended up doing on the bridge and the ready room. And we went through several of them. And Katie was the last one that I did 2 scenes before you. Where you came on and did that scene. And I, when she came on and did it, I thought, well, she's the captain, for God's sakes. What are we
Did you
waiting
do it
for?
with Genevieve Bouchard?
Yes, I did it
what
with
was that
Genevieve.
like?
Well,
No, a great actress.
yeah,
a great
she's an
actress.
amazing actress. But she is not really was not really cut out for television, and the schedules and the dialogue changes and the sort of
Hours.
artificial sort of, you've got to get yourself into something that's not real. She's more grounded, more into, I think, emotionally connected things in terms of dialogue and storylines and character relationships, whereas, taking over the bridge and commanding the photon torpedoes to be fired at something out there in space was not really her thing. And bless her heart, it just didn't work out that way. Katie has...
Bless her heart, and thank you very much.
Yes. Katie has experience working on soap operas. Ryan's Hope before this, and that...
One lone clap. You survived!
That experience gives her, and my colleagues will know as well, because I worked on that show for 7 years. I know that I don't think I heard Katie flub a line more than 3 times in 7 years, just from the scenes I was
What, 3
in.
times?
3 times.
I never heard her flub one at all, Tim. I don't know why you're creating this malicious rumor.
Yeah. And I don't mean she didn't remember the line. I just remember she just tripped over a word. That was it. The rest
He's
of us...
backpedaling now.
Yeah, the rest of us are fumbling around all the time. Katie had this locked, and I said, how in the world can she do that? Because of her soap experience. And she look at a page of dialogue.
No,
and
it
it's
wasn't
done.
that, Tim.
God damn it if it wasn't.
It wasn't that so much as you, and you were there. You were all there. You saw it. The stakes were unbelievably high. So I empathize with the challenges that you have all faced, because I think they expected me to fail. They came, do you remember the first season? The suits? Mm-hmm. And they stood at the foot of the bridge, and they just, like this, stood and watched me. And I thought, they're waiting, and I'm not going to let them win. I'm going to win. And that's why every line came out correctly.
That was a Herculean effort. Even if you had to prove that, I don't know how in the hell you did that. I mean, I had to keep my job too, but the amount of dialogue that they would rewrite at midnight, the day before shooting.
Do you remember the fax machine? 2 o'clock in the morning?
2 in the morning, yes, yeah. And
Those were the days.
The deliveries at the door. They would bring the scripts to us at 11, 12 o'clock.
We
at
went
night.
on the air right at the dawn of the internet, so we
Yes.
didn't get them emailed.
No, we
Some
didn't get
poor schmo from the studio drove them over at 2 o'clock in the morning.
to
And the
every
pages were one of 16 different colors. All the rewrites came on a wheel of colors. Do you remember the color wheel?
Yes, I remember. What was it, season 4 or 5, where we started shooting the episode and they hadn't finished the last 2 acts yet.
Oh, or
Like,
more.
We didn't know how we were going to end the story.
But do you guys understand, in feature films, Kate's predecessor for 2 days, Genevieve Bouchard, you shoot a 1 page of script in a day on a feature film that has any kind of a budget. In television, we shot on an average day 7 pages, right? On an average day, and as much as 11, depending on what the content of the page. And so you see the order of magnitude is minimally 7 times as much material for someone who comes from a background of only shooting feature films.
Yes.
And I think that was really an adjustment.
It was breathtakingly hard
Yes.
in the beginning. I won't kid you. I mean, those days were harrowing.
16 hours on average.
Technobabble you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
But thank God you did. Because I would get the pages at 3, 4 in the morning, as you guys just said, with a 5:30 call.
Yep.
And you'd have to memorize it.
Yep.
Without sleep.
Yep.
3 pages of warp 8. We're going, I mean, the coordinates and the, what are they,
It's going
hell
on,
are they talking
on and
about?
on and on. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But we did it. We did it, and we did it because obviously it was meant to be. I had a great crew. All of them. We're missing the others. Wonderful friends. And it is a foxhole situation, Star Trek, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
You're in a foxhole.
You're in a foxhole.
You really rely on your partner.
Yeah.
But the suits, you see, were staring at me exclusively as a woman. And so they fooled around with me no end. They must have changed that hairstyle 25 times in 3 months. What a captain she was. Every time she went into the ready room, she came out with a different hairdo. I went to Rick Berman and I said, this is absolutely patently absurd. Do you want to win the big demographic, which were 25 to 35-year-old straight males, right? Let me be the captain. Enough with the hair and the boobs and the boots, although I did have to wear the boots because you guys were so tall. It was like a little cartoon. Agreed. But it was it was a Herculean effort, I'd say.
I do remember the hair. They obsessed over her hairdo, and it was just ludicrous. I mean, I was what are they thinking about, and are they paying attention to the stories, the characters? What's going on?
They were
with her
thinking
hair?
Patrick Stewart was a hell of a lot easier.
Well, we used to call it the bun of steel in the beginning. It was so set that you could have used it as a battering ram to open up a turbo lift. I mean, unbelievable.
Thank you for rescuing me, Garrett.
You're welcome.
Yes.
It was a ridiculous pun, wasn't it?
Computer.
If only I'd had your mask, Robbie, it would have been complete.
I always just thought that Captain Janeway had like a hairstyle replicator in the ready room. So,
Yes, yes.
you know, coffee black, and I think I'll have my page boy look today. Yeah. Something away mission like surprised me.
We did have that episode where you're touched by you-know-what. My you-know-what.
What? I know a lot of whats. Which what? Which what are we watching?
Janeway didn't have much of a butt, but she had one, and he found it when he became... What did...
Yes, I remember that very well. Yes. I remember the episode. The shooting day, actually. I have the date framed at home. It was the day that the doctor placed his hand on the seat of power. You don't remember that? When I examined Janeway's lower back injury.
Remember it, the seat of power. That's it from now
And they
on.
actually had to frame it so they couldn't show where my hand went. It just gracefully drops below the bottom of your television frame. No, it's true. It was a moment I'll never forget.
There was, and of course, in the turbo lift, typically before we all would spill out onto the bridge or whatever room we were coming in, and we were standing in the turbo lift before they yelled action, there would be a lot of butt grabbing in there too. Just
You know what else happened in the turbo lift?
Oh.
What else happened in the turbo lift, Lieutenant Paris?
So many things, Katie. So
We
many
copulated.
things. What's that?
We copulated.
We did copulate.
And I gave birth to 100 little lizards. So sexy.
This is a first-time admission that you're witnessing here. I've never heard it directly acknowledged.
Here's what I remember in the turbo lifts with Tim Russ or Ethan Phillips.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So there was a competition of gaseous anomalies that would happen right before we entered a scene. Ethan Phillips or Tim Russ, or sometimes myself, would participate in trying to outdo each other.
That's. Yep.
And there were some very memorable moments in the turbo lift.
And the turbo lift doors would open and I'd shout, "Report!"
Yes. It was the voluntary control over what I always considered an involuntary function was quite amazing. You know, I mean, I'm impressed with actors who can cry on screen, but this particular skill seems less in demand.
Is Lolita and Dave, will there be a lot of flatulence in the documentary? Will we see any? They're not here anymore. But it sounds like it was pretty omnipresent on the set. Everybody, that was great.
Of course, they're not here. They're flatulating.
Okay, the only person who can fart on command was Tim Russ. Okay, one day Tim called over to the sound department and he says, "Hey guys, come on over here. Bring your boom mic." They put the boom up to his posterior, and Tim proceeded to let out a gaseous anomaly that I'm going to guess took about 1.5 minutes to come out. And they recorded what sounded like for 1.5 minutes.
And they all stood around, the men, looking so proud, in abject admiration.
Yeah.
I said, "This man is my friend."
Ethan Phillips is no slouch in any of that department, by the way.
No, he's good too.
In the Rock episode, when the Rock was in the arena, right?
Sunkatsi, yes.
We were standing on stage 16, which is our swing stage. We'd build the special sets for that. And I was standing outside with a bunch of guests who were invited, by the way, by some of the producers to list, because The Rock was there. So we had a lot of people there because, he was a big name at the time. And we were standing outside. They were shooting a scene. It was dead quiet because you have to be on a bell. And as soon as the director said, "Cut," and Ethan let one rip. He's standing right next to me. Just huge. And then he blamed me. Phillips, he's the worst.
I also believe that he was capable of belching and farting at the same time.
Do you guys remember Tim's lounge chair? Do you remember the beach chair?
Oh yeah. The lounge
Tim,
chair.
so we all had directors' chairs that we would sit in while they were lighting or we were waiting. But Tim brought, I think on the pilot episode, he brought a beach chair to lay out. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's what, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
Because when I was working on, initially when I was working on Deep Space Nine, this was before Voyager, I was playing the Klingon on Deep Space Nine. And I was so exhausted that week. I worked almost every day, and it was 2 hours of makeup in the morning and then another hour to get it off at night, and 12, 13-hour day. I was so tired that instead of going back to my trailer on any kind of break, I brought a chaise lounge in there, and I would just set it up on the sound stage there and just go lay down for that, I may have 10 minutes to get a good power nap in. And so it really worked. It really helped because the time it takes him to go get me in the trailer and come back, that's sleep time. So I would bring a chaise lounge and lay that down. And
You were smart.
a hell of a lot more comfortable
It was
than
rigorous.
You also came to rehearsals in the morning in a robe and slippers.
Stark naked underneath the robe.
Well, that I'm not familiar with that. I always thought I thought he was wearing crotchless panties, but I never have. But he came to the set, am I right, in a robe and slippers? It's like if you ever stay at a spa hotel and people on the elevator have robe and slippers. That's what he was like at Paramount Studios.
When we would rehearse the scene, I would be at my station, and I might be in a robe and slippers for the rehearsal. And I might just lay down behind my station and take a nap while they were lighting, because it takes less time, to go than going back to my trailer. And on occasion, I would bring the chaise lounge. I'm telling you, it's more comfortable than a stage chair.
This is like a meeting of Narcoleptics Anonymous.
There was a day where Tim was the last person to come onto the bridge, and they called all of us, and so someone says, "Where's Tim?" And I don't know if it was Bob Picardo or Robbie McNeill, one of the two said, "I think he's in the trailer right now picking out just the right pair of slippers to wear." That's why he's late. Now, Tim may have started the reclining beach chair from when he worked on Deep Space Nine, but when he came onto Voyager, he perfected it. So he had the little beach chair, chair. He had a little blanket. He also had a little heater, a personal heater he put right between his legs and just heat his crotch up while he was lying there on the.
I had a space heater as well because it was
yeah.
damn cold in the wintertime.
And weren't there a couple of women
Cold as a New York
involved?
courtroom.
There were a couple of women involved.
Feeding him grapes, maybe,
Yes,
when he was.
grapes.
Yeah.
So not where I thought the conversation.
Yes, well, you get us up here, you're going to get something you didn't expect.
I thought that's what I smelled, Tim, but I wasn't going to call you out on stage. Didn't expect that
Well,
either.
he redefines inclusion and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, just to not to move away from the topic of bodily fluids and gaseous anomalies or anything, we have come so far in the last 30 years since the show was on, but I feel there have been monumental steps forward and then also backward. I'm curious, how do you see? Does society today look the way that 30 years ago you imagined that it might?
Absolutely not. We're in a very bad spot, ladies and gentlemen. And you know who I'm talking about. And I believe that we're, a global course correction is called for. We're talking about Russia, through the Middle East, down to China, and back to our hero, who now is sitting in criminal court. But never before has our right to be a free people, a democracy, been so imperiled as it is in this moment. Your freedom as well. And this is the time to fight, really speak, because there is a chance that this monster, forgive me for speaking frankly, I'm sure some of you are pro-Trump, but I don't really give a damn. The guy has to go.
I think we have no choice but to speak frankly. I think that I think the time for worrying about the feelings of those who do not worry about anyone else's feelings has passed. I think we have to be willing to say.
Yes.
Dan, I mean, we've got to speak about this openly.
Yes.
You've got to go on your social. You've got to talk, or he will find his monstrous way.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah. And in fact, on the other side of the coin, which is when you're to your point, Dan, or your question about it, on the other side of the coin, look at the commercials now.
Well, that's
Look at the
true.
commercials now. Look at what's happening with the entertainment industry and with television and what you're starting to see. Series, movies, commercials. You are seeing the diversity. You are seeing gay relationships in commercials.
Sometimes it's a little funny, Tim.
Well, yeah,
There's a black husband, a white wife,
Exactly.
an Asian child.
blended families, interracial marriages, gay relationships on commercials, because they just want to sell toilet paper, man, and that's all that matters to them is the green. So we are seeing today, as opposed to 30 years ago. You didn't see that 30 years ago, not even close, and now you see it. So at least there are the powers that be are starting to put out. And in this case, as Kate knows, in the past it was always a debate as to whether or not society is changing and then it's being reflected by entertainment, or is entertainment, starting out what's going on and then it's reflected in society. And
What do you think? I think television
in
is
this
reflecting.
case now it's starting. It is kicking off, and it is pushing, and it is exposing all of that to the country. And when you start seeing this, for the young people who are watching it, everybody's watching, and you start seeing it, and it becomes commonplace. It's no longer an issue. It becomes more ingrained. So I think that is a really good thing to see in the cultural evolution of the country. It's a good thing to see.
But wouldn't you agree that culturally we're living in such extremes that we must be careful?
Absolutely.
You must be careful now how you speak. or you will be canceled.
Yeah.
Immediately canceled. I mean, I've seen it over and over again. The whole woke thing, Me Too, be careful. But perhaps we have to go to the extreme in order to come back to the,
you have to.
to
you
the
have
middle.
to. And it's not. You're not going to be able to stop it.
But not regarding Trump. That's a different thing.
Yeah. It is a crossroads. It is really a crossroads.
But he's not a crossroads.
No, it is he and the movement behind him that creates the crossroads that we're at. I mean, this is a decision. I mean, we're banning books for God's sakes. I mean, give me a break. You know, come on.
No, I'm not.
I was just going to say, we could have a TV show right here. Tim and Kate are the married couple. This is the uncle, and we're the children. Robbie and I are the kids. Dad, Mom, hi.
Okay. It's a commercial about allergies.
I was going to piggyback on something Bob mentioned earlier, like, looking back at the origins of Star Trek, there was a lot of talk about diversity. There was a lot of talk. But the beginnings of Star Trek was still run by the same kind of people, most of the same kind of stories, most of the same, everybody fit a certain mold for a long time. And it's been a slow process. But now we're actually seeing it. Now it's very intentional. The choices that are being made on Star Trek shows to include handicapped actors, gay actors, ethnic diversity, trans, all kinds of characters that Star Trek talked about 50 years ago when it first started, but now we're seeing it. So it takes some time, but it's beautiful to see. I really love what is happening in the Star Trek world. And another thing I would say is, like, Garrett and I do this podcast called The Delta Flyers. Some of you may know. Thank you. I think one thing we do on our podcast is we talk about the theme or the moral or the lesson of every episode. Because if there's one thing that Star Trek does, I think, better than almost any other television show, is to distill these kinds of lessons down to ways that invite all kinds of people to look at those lessons from their own experience and take away, just a better way to behave in the world. So I think the more we can get Star Trek out there and get people to try, if they're not a Star Trek fan, take a look at it, because there's a lot of great lessons that can help our world, and I think it already has. I think Star Trek has evolved, and that's been culturally a part of some of these changes. The commercials that we're seeing, the diversity, all of that stuff. Star Trek was one of the first shows to really take that on.
But was this not Roddenberry's dream?
Yeah.
This was his vision. But I want to ask you this, Robbie, for
About
your
my
information.
mask? About my
Robbie
mask?
McNeill is one of the best and deepest read people I know, highly literate man. Why do you think it takes so long for change?
Fear. I think fear.
Fear. And what is fear? Exactly the right answer. You see, he's well read. And what is fear very close to?
Anger?
It's close to darkness. It's close to evil, right?
Yeah.
So we're allowing our dark side to always take control of our better side. That's what I see is going on right now, sort of politically. I hate to return to that. But I'm very concerned.
Has there been an episode of Trek? Because I would love to see an episode of Star Trek on one of the shows that deals with misinformation.
That's a very good idea, but we must have done it.
I don't think.
Sure, you directed it, Tim. No, Living Witness.
Living Witness was about revisionist history. Well, it was revisionist history, but I'm thinking just in terms of, like, in real time, an alien culture, or perhaps something that happens with the ship and the crew, where the theme is misinformation. People not believing what they actually see with their own eyes, or believing something that's completely twisted and backwards, or the opposite, so that's used as a weapon.
I think there's a lot of episodes like that, Tim, honestly. There's a lot of episodes where alien planets are manipulated by leaders
False intel. I
by
mean, that was
false
always the
information.
thing.
Yeah.
Believe this. Follow up. Believe this. I think there's a lot of
And it's
episodes like
frightening.
that.
It is the most. It is to me. That's what today is most frightening to me. That's what scares me more than anything else. Is this misinformation tidal wave that we've been under here in recent.
How could it be otherwise? We live in a sort of digital, what would you call it?
Well, it's not just that. I mean, it's also major media outlets with FCC licenses.
And now we have the
that are allowed
advent of
to do that.
AI. Yeah, but I mean, it's all
Just
converging.
crazy. That is going to be, I swear to God, that's going to be the biggest hurdle we have to get over. Is that, the proliferation of information and how it's, permeates our society, because it completely. It erodes the political discourse. It erodes the information.
That's a great idea. You should pitch it.
I think I might. I might very well.
I'm free.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how does the level of just absurdity that we have reached thanks to Mr. Trump change the rules? I feel like the election when he won, Senator Clinton had been studying her entire life for a chess match, and she sat down and he was playing checkers. And the rules changed as to how to win. How have the rules changed in dealing with these things?
Who's at the center? An old white man, right? They make the rules. They still make the rules.
Correct.
Would you debate that? They still
Correct.
make the rules. Still. I'm sorry, what are you saying?
Say what
Oh, Mike,
Yes.
Mike.
And they don't have to adhere to them themselves.
But I think
That's the main thing.
I also think, just to jump on the certainty, the idea of certainty. One of the things that Star Trek is at the heart of Star Trek is curiosity and investigating and exploring and discovering and being open to new ways of thinking. And I think it's very dangerous.
What are the tenets of the Prime Directive? I mean, just name them. Tim, name them.
Tim.
You know them. You know them well.
Well, one of the things was not, one of the main directives was not to interfere with the natural evolution of another culture, to mangle up and interfere, which they did every time. So that was like every time you turned around, they were violating the Prime Directive. That was the main tenet, if I recall. Yes, it was.
The main tenet is to stay out of people's business. Yes,
Yes,
do
that
not.
was the main tenet, which they never did.
First, do no harm. Well, we wouldn't have had 7 seasons. if we
Well,
did.
you wouldn't have any episodes. You wouldn't have any stories. So yes, that was the basic idea. Not to muddle with everybody else.
But I think this idea of certainty, to go back to that, and you talk about information and misinformation, I think when we are manipulated to believe that any opinion is true, then people can be certain. People can say, well, yeah, there's all this information, so don't trust that information. I'm going to tell you the truth. And it's very dangerous when that starts to happen. And when people lose their curiosity, their own investigation, there are some things that are true. There are some things that are facts, and sometimes it takes a little effort. And there's so much information now on the internet, you can find proof of anything you want to believe. Do you know what I mean? If you want to find your bias, it's there. You can find the proof for it. But to really be open
Tell me this, Robbie.
Yes,
Do you
yes.
think, and everybody, I sense a low simmering fury beneath all of the things. Fury. People are furious. There seems to be an impotent rage, certainly in the movement, right? The M movement. It's anger. Mm-hmm. It's anger coming out of Russia, right? China, I'll leave alone because who the hell knows about China. But happening right now in our own country is a faction of people who feel disenfranchised and marginalized. We can all relate to that. And because they are made impotent by their current state of being out of work. I mean, everything's down. It's certainly not what it was in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, even the 80s. I get it, but there's a better way to affect change, isn't there? That's what we have to find. That's what we have to find.
It is. You're absolutely right. They feel that they are abandoned by the big corporations who don't want to invest in infrastructure in those regions and areas. They don't live in the cities. They live in the rural outskirts and the small towns, which are drying up. And they live their entire lives in those places. They don't leave. And there's nothing going there. It's like the old days when they used to have the railroad, what they thought would be coming through or was coming through a town, and all of a sudden the railroad's no longer coming through and that town dies. So there's that sort of feeling of being left behind by the government.
And I can
being
understand
left behind
it.
by
Can't you?
Yes, by the liberal elites and being left behind by the whatever. And I can certainly understand that is a real thing. And how, as a society, do you deal with that? What can you do for people in that situation?
I remember Marvin Rush, our beloved DP.
I was trying to remember his name. Marvin Rush.
Marvin Rush
episode.
Marvin was our DP. He was the DP on Next Gen. At the end, he moved over to Deep Space Nine for a couple of years, and then he came to us. So Marvin was in Star Trek. A lot of you know. Does everybody know who Marvin Rush was, the DP? Oh, the DP.
Director of photography.
Director of photography, the head of the camera department, so the lighting, the shots, all of that. But Marvin was a true nerd. He really was. He drove the first electric car I ever saw in my life. He had the...
That's right.
Remember, Marvin had that little
flip
app.
phone. Motorola flip phone.
He was the first adopter of everything technology. But my point is, I remember Marvin saying to me one time, he said, the thing about Star Trek, the reason that the society, the concept of Starfleet and that optimistic future, the reason it works is because of replicators. Because of what? Replicators. He said, when people are not afraid of having dinner on the table, clothes on their back, when all of a sudden our basic needs are met, we can have this optimistic society. We can have this peace. We can have this coming together. But when people are worried about food on the table or clothes on their back or just shelter or any of that, it leads to these fears, coming back to fear and anger and all of that. Yes. So I think there is
replicators are also crucial to an intrepid vessel being lost in the Delta Quadrant.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. But I do think that that Star Trek lesson of making sure people have their needs met can lead us. Like, first things first, we got to make sure people have food, education, clothes, housing.
Right.
And then the people aren't afraid anymore.
The fundamentals. The fundamentals.
Just to get out of the gate.
Yeah.
Just to get out of the gate.
Can we ask this? Yes. Stand up. Shout.
Hold on. Yeah.
Watch out for the panty mask.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think that part of the problem that we have with inclusion is that we, the people that include and open, also include, sadly, a lot of the haters. And we have difficulty with boundaries. So I think that in Voyager, we actually saw a different way to include and to be open, but with a really strict, nope, that's not acceptable, right? And I think this is something that as a society we need to talk about. How can we be inclusive and allow diversity with boundaries? How can we do it with accepting people, but say it's okay to say no to certain opinions?
Of what boundaries do you speak? What are you talking about?
If someone is hateful. Yeah, if someone is hateful, I can accept the person as a person and respect them as a human. But I can say, no, those opinions do not have place here.
Yeah.
And that is not inclusive.
Yeah.
And what happens is, I feel like they say like, oh, no, you're not inclusive, and that hurts, people that are trying to be extra inclusive will allow it. And I think this is where we are wrong.
It eclipses it in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Unforgivable. Well done. Thank you.
Tribal.
But
Thank you.
part
Thank
of
you.
we can't deny part of our big problem today is scorched earth politics, where any kind of compromise, you saw it yesterday, any kind of compromise is looked at by one political party as a betrayal. Not, the whole...
Are you talking about Mike Johnson?
Yeah, government is supposed to function. Government is supposed to govern. But if you have a radical group that can, within government, saying, if you ever compromise in any way with the other side, we will replace you. I mean, that's ridiculous.
It's like the Maquis, Bob. It's like the Maquis.
It's like, exactly.
It's like the Maquis.
It's like the Maquis, but not the Kazon.
No.
No.
But
Not
I
the
return
case
to, we live in fear. The fact that we're applauding Mike Johnson for making a humane decision, a very fundamental decision to provide aid to Ukraine. I mean, and people are saying he's finally shown his mettle. He's the Speaker of the House, right?
He has to, he's trying to fund the government, I'd say, to keep us, keep the government funded and going on, get something done, rather than trying to create and impeach a president for doing nothing.
Exactly.
Can you guys imagine if Kate was on the bridge and said, "Warp fucking 9, Mr. Paris"?
All right.
You know what?
I want to ask this question. How many believe that Garrett Wang's impersonation of Captain Janeway is good? Be careful. I spoke with fury earlier, didn't I? Well done.
Okay, I just want to say, I because of the politics of this country, it makes me stay awake at night because I wondered, is this going to get to the point where it falls into a civil war in this country? So what we have to remember more than anything is to respect your fellow human being, and when you speak to them, come from a place of love. You have to think that way. That's how you come to a compromise. The kind of love that produces salamander lizard babies. This is the love that we need.
True love. True love. But people don't lead with that, Garrett.
No.
They don't. Why? Perhaps we are as primitive as we ever were. We lead with our own instinct to survive, to get what we want to get, rather than ever looking at the other person first.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's true?
It's tribal. I have to admit that, I tend to fall on the tribal side. It's very difficult for me to walk in the shoes of Jesus, okay, in terms of forgiving
The slippers of
MAGA,
Jesus.
as it were. Yeah, it's very difficult. I have to work on that. I admit I'd have to work on that. If I am speaking to somebody, and I haven't in any time recent, who is, a hardcore, MAGA follower, if I could have a rational discussion with them, I will try to have a rational discussion with them. But they have to be open to discussion. And if you're not, it's not going to happen. So I have no sympathy for them if they're
Yes,
not going to
ma'am.
make the effort.
Come here.
I have something to say, damn it.
Say it.
Okay. To me, this boils down to education, because people don't know how to assess information. They don't know what's real and what's not real, and because we haven't really valued education in this country for decades, now we have these people who, they go on the internet, they don't know that, that's not a real source. They don't know how to check. Is that really news? Did anybody double check that? So they just believe whatever their friends believe. And so how can you have a rational conversation with someone the way you might have when we were young, frankly, when people read better things and they didn't exactly ban something they didn't like in this state or that state? So to get to the core of it for me is, and it'll take a while, is to value education more in this country so that everybody learns how to think, if possible. Whether it's formal education or you are surrounded by people who are intelligent and you are in a community where people teach you to value that instead of the...
But do you think we're really listening to each other? Aren't we always thinking about what we want to say, what we want to...
Well, I am, because I had grabbed the mic and I said what I wanted. So I'm guilty. But
funny.
No one was getting to that base unit for me of education. You know, it's like Star Trek also is science. It's proving something. It's, you know, so you don't just accept the answer. You say, well, let's make sure we have it right, you know, because lives are at stake, right? So anyway, I don't want to. I'd love to have my own conversation.
You definitely have a point.
Thank you.
You have a point in terms of education. However, I think there's a level of, if someone comes up to you and says that there's a pizza parlor that has a trap door in it where Hillary Clinton is trafficking babies and cannibalizing them, I don't know how much education or internet searching you need to do on something like that. Do you really need, at some point, you have to use a little bit of brain power to just go, you know, that doesn't sound quite right. I don't know if that's a real thing or not. I mean, there's come on, let's be real. There's information that's just nonsense that you have to, on its face, cannot believe. If you choose to believe that kind of lunacy, you probably need to see somebody for some therapy.
But that's what I love about, like, Tara, what you just said. Tara also is a Delta Flyers patron for all of you. We know,
Hey.
I know Tara. Good to see you. What Tara's talking about, though, is like learning how to think. That's what I love that Star Trek does so well. It helps remind us how to think, how to problem solve, how to think ethically and morally, and use critical thinking to solve problems. Star Trek is a great way to bring people into that kind of thinking that they need to use, the parts of the brain.
And dare
they need
I
to use.
say, how to listen with your whole being, right?
Yeah.
Not to compartmentalize how you're listening, to truly listen. To listen to the, let's just say, the Trump supporter, right? I really am curious to know why. Why you feel this way. On what is this grounded? Tell me. Yes, ma'am. Please.
My family members who are right-wing, they are black and white thinkers. They can only see one side or the other. They are not critical thinkers. They are both of them are just very literal one way or another. They can't see anything in the middle, and they can't really see nuances, and they don't really know how to really analyze what's going on.
And how quickly do they go from zero to fury when you confront them?
At this point, we don't, because...
You just don't associate with.
No, we don't. When they come to my house, they know there's no conversations about religion or politics. That's the only way we can remain civil.
You know what? That's what I'm talking about.
And-
what does that mean? You're being minimized. You're being reduced.
But I
because of
also,
their way of thinking.
it's my only way to have a relationship with my brother and my nephew.
But you can't sacrifice that.
I promised my mother that I would not abandon them, and I have to keep them as family members. Yeah. But I am myself, and they know I am myself, and they know that I abhor everything like that. But I can't change them, and they're not going to be changing me.
How many of you in this room are in that same situation of being stuck? It's incredible. Look at that. Look at that.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's just
I chose to let go.
of all of them.
Ah.
Come here, take this mic and tell us the story. There's nothing more important than this, so we don't have to go to anything else.
My soulmate passed away many years ago. And at that time, I grew up in a very traditional, white, heterosexual, conservative, religious, all that stuff. And so was he. I was very fortunate to meet my soulmate young. He died young. And I was left with 2 very young children. And my husband's family was extremely supportive. I can't say enough about that. However, myself and my children have moved on to a different place, a diverse place, and they have not. And we cannot communicate in any way. So I've had to let go of that entire.
What happens when you try to communicate with them?
Extreme abhorrence.
And rage, or you met with?
Not rage, but you are sick.
Wow.
We've fallen to the dark side. You were talking about the dark side before. We've fallen to the dark side. That wokeness has infected you, more like an infection. I feel like we're talking about some Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
But we've made a choice of a different family. And it's the necessary choice. I feel that grief. I feel that loss. But it's a necessary choice, and I'm okay with that choice.
In order to grow.
Yes. Yes.
And Trek, yes.
One last thing.
Yeah.
What I would say, and my reason for making that choice despite my growing up is after I lost my soulmate, and after a couple of years of just plain old grief, when I started, coming up for emotional air, I realized, how can I look at other people who have met the person they love and out of my own rigidity and mental rigidity deny them the ability to find their soulmate? I could not, I had to make that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Outstanding.
I think
Thank you for that.
Thank you for
very
sharing
much.
that.
That's very, very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
I think that sometimes estrangement can be the healthiest choice, honestly. I think that we can have a chosen family, and if our biological family doesn't accept us and doesn't love us and doesn't want to include us in that family, choosing estrangement, I think, can be a healthy choice. It's sad, and there's grief that goes along with it. And I would imagine in this room that there are people who are diverse and different than their families and have had that experience. And my heart breaks for you. But it can be a very healthy choice to go where you're loved, to go where you belong and where you feel at home.
And I think also Trek also has as the stories, the other thing that we also deal with in Trek is we have to learn and discover these lessons as we encounter some of the alien species we have. Innocence that we dealt with the young children who we thought were being abandoned to die by their adults, and in fact they were actually older people who were aging the opposite way. And we have to learn about the TOS episode in DS9. I think about the rabbit, as it were, they're being chased by the predator. And they're trying to defend and save him, but that's part of their culture. So to discover and learn and understand that there are differences, that's the main thing also about Trek that we have.
Star Trek.
The beauty of it, yes.
Yeah, so obviously we're all huge fans. I personally love how many moral questions and very interesting and deep questions are brought up throughout the Voyager series. And my question is, in terms of morality, where did you all fall in terms of the Tuvix episode?
Why?
You don't have to answer.
Why, oh Lord? Jesus in your slippers, tell me why.
I get nothing but questions about that episode. That is the episode. I think out of all of them, we did a hell of a lot of episodes, but that one is always an issue. And I am always defending the captain's choice. Always.
Tuvix was inevitable to be brought up at this panel. I think Tuvix is always inevitable.
Always.
I just want to say, because they're wrapping us up. I don't know.
Because the panel is
I want to say
getting
one
ready
thing about the
probably
Tuvix
for-
episode. The studio wanted to keep Tuvix because it would have saved his salary. So I definitely see that point of view.
I don't have a question. I just have one thing I want to say. All the things that we've been talking about, there's one thing we all need to do. Bring one person with us to vote on November
Absolutely.
5th.
Absolutely.
Make sure
Absolutely.
we all bring somebody with us to vote.
My God, yes.
And this Tuesday on the primaries, let's vote. Vote blue. Let's get rid of these MAGA people.
Especially in Pennsylvania. Especially this state. Let's do it. Come on, guys.
Do you want to do another one? Take another quick question?
Yes, of course.
Yep.
Hello.
Your cosplay is
Wait
from
a
Time and
second.
Again, correct? Robbie goes, look at the girl over there. Is she wearing the Burger King outfit? I go, yes.
What is that outfit?
It's from Time and Again.
Episode 3 of Voyager, yes.
You wore that outfit.
Wait a minute.
I meticulously
Did you direct it?
recreated your outfit, yes.
No.
You want to see a picture? 'Cause
What was the name of the episode?
time and again, you went back in time a day because they
Time
blew
and
up the
again.
planet.
Kate,
Episode
you
3.
and Robbie slipped through time, and then you have to stop this disaster from happening that blows up the whole planet.
Is that when the lizards began?
No, yes, that is the beginning of the lizard.
It is the
yes.
first, like...
All right, what's your question, madam?
Okay, as a former, unfortunately, diversity and equity educator, I dealt with this issue a lot, and I also have MAGA parents. So one of the things that happens when you are talking about diversity and equity is there's sort of 3 zones. There's the comfort zone, where people are nice and comfortable. There's the growth zone, and then there's the panic zone. Right? So once you start getting into that growth zone, it is real easy to slip into panic, and that's when people's brains turn off, and they are no longer able to engage in that discussion. So when we would do diversity and equity classes, I am from a swing state. I'm actually from Nevada, which is northern Nevada, which is very politically diverse because we have very, very rural areas, which I'm from, and then we have the city people, and then we have a very transient population. So when we're trying to teach teachers that they need to see their students, they don't always see their students because they have all of these prejudices. And once you start talking about those prejudices, they start panicking because, like, no, I'm a good person. We're not saying you're a bad person. We're saying you need to engage in a different way so that you are seeing your students. And one of the things that I love about Star Trek, it is really inclusive in that way. Like, I see you. What are we going to do to get through this situation? Right? So thank you for having been on my favorite Star Trek. But I just wanted to say, like, all of this diversity and equity talk, like, there's a lot of depth that goes into it that people physically, like brain-wise, cannot engage in a healthy way unless they are ready to engage in it. And oftentimes when we have those MAGA parents, like my dad has Alzheimer's adjacent, like we cannot engage with him because he is too far into this and we cannot get him out. So there,
Yeah, wait until he gets ready.
yes, well, he is, losing his mind slowly but surely. So, there is no talking to him because he just flips a switch and he gets angry. And then he goes to his room and then we're like, okay, well, goodbye, Patrick.
I have this recurring dream where I kidnap Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. I put them in a room, I chain them to chairs, and make them watch every episode of TOS, DS9, Voyager until they get it. Until they get it.
Okay, I'm getting like the multiple wrap-up signs. I just want to say.
He's dying to ask one question.
Okay, go for it, quick.
So, obviously, Star Trek is very about more life movies, and which was groundbreaking having Kate as captain of people. So, my question is, who is the better female leader, Captain Janeway or Samantha Parker?
Or who?
Samantha
Parker. It's a reference to the other franchise. I'm afraid I'll answer that privately at the autograph table. All right?
This is the danger of not screening the questions ahead of time.
I just said I was only clearly my preference is clear for this captain. I just did not want to entertain a question about the other franchise in front of when I'm on stage with my Star Trek colleagues. It's just in bad taste.
The other franchise.
It's the other.
What are you talking about?
I was on another. All right, Kate, I have to break the news to her. She doesn't know. I spent a year on a show called Stargate. If I'm ever in Star Wars, I will have won the trifecta.
When did you do that? When did you do
I
that?
was a commander on that. I was the captain on. It was like in 2008.
Oh, I see. Busy.
Right.
So many jobs.
Once every 15 years, like clockwork, I get a job.
Okay, so yes, unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up. I just want to say that Kate is actually going to be appearing on our scholarship panel as well. We switched the scholarship panel and the documentary panel, so you definitely want to come to that as well. And then just to end on, you had said earlier about when you first started how these suits were basically waiting for you to fail. They were waiting. When we did the first D&I Con, everyone was waiting for us to fail. And here we are the second year with all of you. We didn't fail. Thank you. Let's hear it, everybody. Thank them for being here. Kate Mulgrew, Tim Russ, Robert Picardo, Robbie Duncan McNeill, and Mr. Garrett Wang. Thank you all so much.
Hi, this is Michael Shanks, and you're watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. The fate of the universe may depend on it. Oh, and have fun, and follow your fandom.